Hello and welcome to this video. In this tutorial, we are going to learn about object-oriented programming in Java. So go ahead and open your Android Studio and then click on Start a new Android Studio project. I'm going to choose empty activity here and I'm going to click on Next. Then here specify the name of the project. So I'm going to type in here OOP Java. Here we can specify the package name, save location path. The language, make sure it is Java, and the minimum API level is API 16. So make sure that if you are using, again, if you're using the Android Studio 3.3 and you have this include navigation controller option, make sure to uncheck this checkbox and then click on finish. So next, let me click on yes. So here, go ahead and open the OOP Java folder. So make sure that here you can see the Android view and make sure that the Gradle build process is now finished, and then you can go ahead and open your app folder. So as you can see, currently there are some processes. So make sure that these processes are finished, and then you can go ahead and put some lines of code inside the main activity class. So now here you can see that the build process is finished. Sometimes the build process is going to be failed. So in that case, you just need to click on build at the top and then click on rebuild project. And if that doesn't solve the problem, you make sure that your internet connection is on. And you can also go ahead and click on file and click on invalid caches or restart. So now let's go inside the onCreate method, and then here I want to create an object of type Boxer. So remember what I told you about classes in the previous tutorials. In order to create an object of a specific type, for example of type Boxer, you need to have a blueprint. And a blueprint is a class in programming. So here I want to create a Boxer object. How can I create that? By creating a Boxer class first. So let's go ahead and open our Android view and then right click on this package that contains the main activity class. Click on new and then click on Java class. So this dialog is going to be opened for you, this window, and then you can enter some values. First, you need to enter the name of your class. So in programming, we always start our class names with a capital letter, especially in the Java programming language. So in order to create a Boxer class, I put the capital B and then I put OXER. So this is the name of the class. Here you need to specify the kind. So the kind is going to be class. We have other kinds here that I'm going to talk about later, but for now let's only focus on the class. Here we have something called the superclass. So the superclass is a concept that is related to the inheritance concept that I am going to also explain in this tutorial. So for now, let's just leave this text field empty. Next, we have the interface that I am going to talk about also in this tutorial. But let's also leave this place empty, and we have the package. So make sure the package is the package that you want to put your file into. So I want to put my file inside this package that contains the main activity class. So the package is okay. And then we have the visibility. So for the visibility, I chose, or by default, this value is public. So this means that our class can be accessed from anywhere inside the project. And the modifiers, it says no. We have, for example, package private, abstract, final. Let's just leave these values as default. And then here it says show select overrides dialog. So do not check this checkbox. Let's leave this setup as default and let's click on OK. Now we have a class and the name of the class is Boxer. Here you can see that inside this package we have the Boxer class. It is public. We have the class keyword and the name of the class. An important point that you need to consider here is that the name of the class that you have here must be the same as the name of the class that you can see inside the Android view. So inside the package, here, you can see that we have this Boxer class. If I right click on it and click on rename, so go ahead and hover over this refactor, and then you can here see the rename here. So I'm going to click on rename, and if I choose, for example, the Boxer to, for example, box, and here you need to click on refactor. If you can see that we have some options. It says search in comments and strings, rename tests, rename variables, search for text occurrences, and rename inheritors. So if I click on refactor here, you can see that the name of the class here is also changed. So that is called refactoring. Refactoring means that you change your code to meet your needs. So here, for example, I wanted to change the name of this class. So I just right click on this file and then hovered over the refactor, and then I just clicked on the rename. And here you can see that make sure that all of these checkboxes are checked, that every references of your class in every file should also refer to the correct class name. So here, let's change it back to Boxer and then click on refactor. But what happens if I try to change the class here in code? So for example, if I change this class to box, now we have an error. If I hover over this error area, it says class box is public, should be declared in a file name box.java. So if you want to create a public class with this name box, we must have a file called box.java, not boxer.java. That is incorrect. So inside this Android view here, you can see that this boxer.java can be opened and we have this box inside it. So it cannot be done here. We can have private classes or inner classes, but we cannot have a public class inside the file with a different name. So let's change this box to Boxer, and now the problem is solved. Now here we have this Boxer class. So here we have the blueprint, but let's put some lines of code here. For example, a Boxer can have some attributes or properties. For example, we can say that the number of gloves, we can create an integer variable and name it as number of gloves. So here the data type is integer, and we know that each Boxer has two or has a pair of gloves. We can say 2 gloves, semicolon. So this is one property of the Boxer class. Another property that we can specify here is that a Boxer has speed property or punch speed. So we can say int punch speed. And then, for example, here we can say that the speed is by default 100, semicolon. Or we have the Boxer power or punch power. So we can say punch power. So by default, we assign 200, semicolon. So these are the properties of the Boxer class. And in Java, make sure to always declare your properties as private, because we do not want any other classes inside our project to manipulate our properties directly. So if the other classes want to manipulate our properties, we have another way that is called getters and setters that can help us to manipulate the value of our properties indirectly. So I will talk about that in this tutorial also. So let's put the keyword private before each of these properties. So we put the access modifier before the data type. So I'm going to put the private before the int. Now that we have these attributes or properties, we can go ahead and create a Boxer object. So we can go inside the main activity class. So let's go inside the curly braces of this onCreate method, because this is the proper method for when our application runs. And we can also see the results as soon as the app runs on the log or maybe on the screen. And here, in order to create an object in Java, first you need to refer to the name of the class. So I'm going to type in here Boxer with capital B. And as I'm typing here Boxer, you can see that the autocomplete feature of Android Studio is helping me to choose the proper class. So I'm going to choose the Boxer class that is inside the package that I specified myself. So I'm going to choose Boxer. Now that I chose Boxer here you can see that at the top we don't have any import statements regarding the Boxer class. That's because the Boxer class is in the same package as this main activity class. So if I show you the Android view, you can see that the Boxer class is in the same package as this main activity class. That's why we can see that it is not necessary or required to import the Boxer class to this file. So now that we referred to this Boxer class, I need to specify the name of the object that I want to create out of this class. So here I can say my Boxer. The name of the variable is my Boxer, and I put an assignment operator. So here, this is the part that we are going to create the actual object of the Boxer class. So far, we have only created a variable of type Boxer. So this variable can only accept objects of type Boxer, but we haven't still created the actual Boxer object. So that's what we are going to do here at the right hand side of this assignment operator. So I'm going to type in here new, and then I need to refer to the Boxer class again with a pair of parentheses. So this syntax here means that I am going to create a new object of type Boxer class. New object of type Boxer. So this parenthesis here is very important. And inside, so here I just need to put a semicolon at the end of the statement. So now we have successfully created a new object of type Boxer. But let's see the address of this object inside the memory, inside the heap memory. So you just need to type in here log.i. First we need to pass the tag. So I'm going to type in here my tag. Next, I'm gonna refer to this my Boxer. So in Java, all classes actually inherit from the object class. And the object class has a method called toString that is going to show a string representation of that object. So here, I can type in here dot toString. You can also put +2 quotes in order to convert this value to a string value, but we can just simply type in here toString because this is an object, semicolon. And if I type in here object here, you can see that we get the object class from the java.lang package. And if I choose this one and hold down the control and click on this object class, here it's going to open the object.java file for us. And here you can see some of the attributes here. For example, we have something called toString. So I'm going to search for a specific method inside this file. So you know how to do that, Control F or Command F if you're using Mac. And I'm going to search for toString method. And here, as I searched for the toString method, it says this method returns a string representation of the object. In general, the method returns a string that textually represents this object. The result should be a concise but informative representation that is easy for a person to read. It is recommended that all subclasses override this method. So for now, don't worry about subclass or superclass. Let's take a look at the method. Here you can see this method toString, and I will talk about methods in this tutorial. But for now, I just wanted to show you that how we get this toString method and how we can call it on an object. So let me close this object.java file and let me delete this object here. Now let's go ahead and run our project. Choose a device and then click on OK. So now let's go ahead and copy this my tag here and then click on logcat. So next let's put it inside the search area. And here we should see the address of this object inside the memory. So here it is the address. First we have our reference to the package. So next you have this value Boxer @E52C169. This value might be different on your computer, but for mine is this value, and this is the address of the Boxer object. So hopefully that makes sense. And the reason that you can see the package name here is that you should actually take a look at the implementation of the toString method. So I'm gonna refer to the object class again here, and I'm gonna search for the toString method. Here we can see that inside this implementation, inside the curly braces of this toString method, you can see that it says getClass.getName. So it's gonna get the package name in this way, and then it's gonna put the @ here inside the quotes. Then we have this part of the code that is going to get the address of the object in the memory, integer.toHex string, and then it passes the hash code. So don't worry about this implementation. It can be a little bit confusing, but you don't have to worry about this one. Let's just close this file, and let's delete this object. Here I just wanted to show you that how we get the package. And now here it's challenge time. You need to go ahead and create a class named Kickboxer and create an object of type Kickboxer here, and then output the address of your object to the log. So good luck. So let's go ahead and create a class of type Kickboxer. I'm gonna right click on this package, new Java class, and the name is going to be Kickboxer. The kind is class, and make sure that you just leave these set up as default and just click on OK. And here let's go inside this Kickboxer class and create some attributes. So here we know that a Kickboxer has something called a kick speed, and we can assign a default value, for example 50. We have something called kick power, so I'm gonna put 70 here, semicolon. A Kickboxer can have also a punch speed, so I'm gonna type in here punch speed. So I'm gonna type in here, for example 80, and the punch power. And I'm gonna type in here, for example 100, semicolon. And then you can go ahead and go inside the main activity class. Inside this onCreate method, let's create a new object of type Kickboxer and name it as myKickboxer. And then I'm gonna type in here new Kickboxer, semicolon. Next, I can just copy this log statement and paste it here, and instead I'm gonna type in here myKickboxer.toString. Let's go ahead and run our project. So now go ahead and click on logcat. So here we should see this value, the Kickboxer, and this is the address. So now it's time to learn about these properties. So we have created some properties inside the Boxer class and the Kickboxer class, but we haven't used them yet. So how we can use them? So first, in order to use the properties of an object, first you need to create an object. Inside the Boxer class, for example, we have properties, but these properties are called instance properties or instance variables. So what do I mean by that? By instance, I mean the object that we create out of the class. So for example, we have the Boxer class, and we have some attributes here. The attributes that I put inside this class are for the instances that we create out of this class. So what do I mean by instance? By instance, I just refer to the object. So if you go to the main activity class, first you can see that we have this myBoxer variable that contains this Boxer object. So we can refer to this myBoxer variable as a myBoxer object. Okay. Now here that we have an object of type myBoxer, of type Boxer actually, its name is myBoxer, I can put the dot operator in order to access the properties or attributes that we have inside the Boxer class. So for example, I can type in here punch speed. So just type in here punch speed. But as you can see here, we cannot access this property. Why? Because if you go to the Boxer class, this punch speed variable or instance variable is declared as private. So if you delete this private keyword, and if you go back to the main activity class, you can see that here we have no errors and we can access the punch speed variable. But this is not the proper way to access an instance variable. So here I just want to show you that how we can assign values to an instance variable. So let's just delete the private keyword or the access modifier here inside the Boxer class, and let's go to the main activity class. Here I want to assign a value for the punch speed of the MyBoxer. So I'm gonna say assignment operator, for example, 900 semicolon. And then I can also specify some values for the other attributes, for example, the punch power or the number of gloves. So here you can see that the values that we assigned to these variables, these values are the default values. So for example, if I go to the main activity class and if I try to output the value of the punch power of this MyBoxer object, then you are going to just get the value, for example, 200. But here I assign the value 900 as the value of the punch speed of this MyBoxer. So let's go ahead and output these values. Let's copy this log statement and paste them here. So for now, let's just comment out the previous log statements, and let's also click on this logcat and click on this clear icon. And then here, instead of outputting the address of the object, I'm gonna say MyBoxer dot punch speed. And also I want to output the value of the punch power. So first, let's say that this value is the punch speed. So just put two quotes and type in here punch speed, colon, space, and then plus. So in order to concatenate the punch speed to this punch speed text. And also let's concatenate this value with another value. Let's put a space and let's say punch power, colon, and then plus here, and then I just need to refer to this MyBoxer dot punch power. Okay, so now let me create a new line so that you can see what's going on here. So first we want to output the value of the punch speed. So I put a text here so that we can see the integer value that we get from this MyBoxer object. What does this integer value mean? And we have also the punch power. So let's run our app and let's see what happens. So inside this logcat area, make sure that you put this value for the tag. So here it is, the value. It says punch speed 900 and the punch power is 200. So hopefully that makes sense. Now it's challenge time. Go ahead and output the values of the kick power and kick speed of your Kickboxer object to the console or to the log, and also make sure to manipulate the value of the kick power. So good luck. So let's go ahead and solve this challenge. First, let's go and first you can see that we have this MyKickboxer variable. So I'm gonna go ahead and I can just say MyKickboxer dot, we have the kick power, kick speed, punch power, and punch speed. Why? You can see that inside this Kickboxer class, I didn't put the private access modifier before the data type. So that's why we can access these properties. So I'm gonna say MyKickboxer dot kick power, for example, is 500 semicolon, MyKickboxer dot, for example, punch power is 700 semicolon, and I can just put a log statement in order to output the kick speed, for example, the kick power, and I can output the value of the punch power and the punch speed. So instead I'm gonna type in here my kickboxer instead of my boxer. So my kickboxer dot kick speed, and also we have the my kickboxer dot kick power. So let's refer to this variable my kickboxer dot kick power. So let's go ahead and run our app. Go ahead and open your Logcat. So here you should see this value. So the value of the kick speed is 50. If you go ahead and open the kickboxer class, here you can see that the value of the kick speed is 50. And we also have the kick power, which is 500. So here in line number 27, I assigned the value 500 as the kick power of the my kickboxer object. So the next important point that I want to talk about is this concept of variable and the object. So here, what do I mean by new kickboxer or new boxer? Let's just type in here new and then box, and then make sure that you put a pair of parentheses at the end of your class name. So this syntax here is just going to create a new object of type boxer in the memory. So we didn't create a variable here in order to assign this object to a variable. So what's the purpose of a variable? We can use a variable in order to refer to our object, to our specific object later. We just create a variable in order to name our object. But how do we create the actual object? By using this syntax. And when I say instance variables, I mean the attributes or the properties that are related to an object of a class. So this means that when you put new boxer, and then you can just put dot here, so dot, and then you can access the attributes of your object here. For example, the punch power, and then I can put an assignment operator 800 semicolon. But if I again put a new keyword here and then say boxer, this is another new object of type boxer that is going to be created in the memory. And then again I can say new boxer dot punch power. For this boxer I'm going to put, for example, 200 as the punch power. So here we have two new objects of type boxer class, and we didn't assign them to a variable so that we can refer to them later. We just created a new object. And if you want to output the value of your boxer object to the console or to the log, you can just create a log statement. So let me just type in here log.i and put my tag, comma, and then here I just need to copy this value and paste it here. Boxer, for example, dot punch power. So I'm going to put this syntax inside the parentheses, and then I'm going to convert this value to a string value by just putting a plus sign and two quotes. So the reason that I put this code inside the parentheses is that we are not allowed to assign a value to an integer variable here as the second argument of this log.i. So if I delete this parenthesis, it's going to show us an error. Here you can see that it is showing us an error, and if I hover over this error area, it says incompatible types required int but found a string value. So it is showing us a nonsense error. We may not understand what's going on here because the second argument of this log.i needs a string value, but it says required int. So this means that there is something wrong with this code here. So we put it inside the parentheses so that it has higher precedence, and first it's gonna assign the value 800 as the value of the punch power of this new boxer object, and then it is going to convert it to a string value. So let's put a semicolon, and here I can just go ahead and run the project. But here we can also see that these two new objects are actually created in the memory by outputting the addresses of these two objects. So first, let's see the value of the punch power here. Go ahead and open the logcat. So here you can see the 800 here. So this time, I'm gonna output the address of these two objects. So I'm gonna first clear this logcat area, and I'm gonna copy this log statement, and I'm gonna paste it here. So here, so first let me tell you that inside, as the second argument of this log.i, we passed new boxer.punchPower 800. So this syntax here is going to again create a new object of type boxer. And that object is different than this object that we created here in line number 33, because you can see that we are not referring to a variable name. We are just creating new objects. So I should have deleted this line of code, because here the syntax is going to create a new boxer object. So now let's go ahead and output the address of these two boxer objects. So first, let's go ahead and instead of assigning the value 800 to this punch power, I'm gonna delete this value. And here, by just putting this new boxer, that's enough. I'm gonna also delete this line of code here. And then I'm gonna delete this punch power, for example, here. So that's it. Now, here we have two new boxer objects that we want to output the address of these two objects in the memory. Let's go ahead and run our app, but first let's comment out the previous log statement here, because we don't want to see any other outputs here. Let's go ahead and run our app. And here you can see the addresses of our objects. So hopefully that makes sense. And you can see that these two addresses are different from each other. This means that we have created two new objects of type boxer. So now let's go back to our main activity class, and let's also comment out these two lines of code because we don't need them anymore. And the next important point that I want to talk about is that getters and setters. So let's go inside the boxer class. And here you can see that we have these attributes. And I told you that you should always declare your attributes as private. So I'm gonna just put the private keyword here. Now that we have put these private keywords, we need to make sure that if we create a new object inside the main activity class of type boxer, then that object can at least assign or get the values of the properties. So we know that these properties or variables are called instance variables, and a new object that you create inside the main activity class, inside the onCreate, should be able to access those properties, should be able to assign a value to that property, or at least get a value. So here you can see that now that I specified these attributes to be private, here inside the main activity class we have an error, and it says that this punch speed variable has a private access inside the boxer class and it cannot be accessed. So I'm going to comment it out too. Now we have the myBoxer and the myKickBoxer. So let's go inside the KickBoxer class, and let's also make these attributes private. So now it's time to learn about getters and setters. So what do I mean by getter? By getter I mean that we create a method to get the value of an instance variable. And by setter I mean to create a method to set or assign a value to the instance variable of an object. So let's go into this boxer class. And here I'm gonna create a getter method for the number of gloves instance variable. So I'm gonna type in here public. So your getters or setters must always be public. And that's the reason that we are creating them, because we want to allow other classes to be able to manipulate our instance variables. So I'm going to type in here public, and then we need to specify the return type. So the return type should be the data type of your variable. So here you can see that the number of gloves instance variable, its data type is integer. So the return type of your getter should be int2. By return type, I mean that your getter or your method must return a value of type that is going to be the return type. So for example, if I create a getter for the number of gloves, this getter must return a value of type integer, because the number of gloves instance variable is of type integer. Next, we need to specify the name. So your getters should always start with the get keyword. You can name it whatever you want, but it's better to be get. And then I'm gonna type in here number of gloves. So as you can see, the autocomplete feature of Android Studio is helping me to name my getter. So it says that, do you mean that you want to name your method as get number of gloves? I'm gonna say yes. And then I'm gonna put a pair of parentheses. So your method names should always end with a pair of parentheses. And then I'm gonna open and close this method by using these curly braces. So next, inside the curly braces of your method, you just need to return the value of your instance variable. So although these instance variables are private, we can use these instance variables inside the Boxer class itself. So I can just say return number of gloves, semicolon. So in this way, we can return the number of gloves from this getter method instead of allowing other classes to directly access our instance variable. And the reason for that is that inside this method, I can manipulate this value. So for example, I can say return number of gloves multiplied by 3. Okay, you can see that it's now much more flexible. We can also create an if statement inside our get number of gloves method, and then, for example, create some conditions. And if a specific condition is true, then we can allow other classes to access the value of the number of gloves. So for example, I can create some Boolean variables here. We will learn all about these later. But for now, I just wanted to show you that how getters are much more flexible. So now, let's learn about the setter. So in order to create a setter, again, you need to put the public keyword. And then the data type of your setters should always be void, because you are not supposed to return any values from a setter. You just want to assign a value to your instance variable. You are not returning any values. So you are going to put void as the return type. Next, you need to specify the name of your method. So you're going to just say set. So your setter methods should always start with the set keyword. And then you can just type in here set number of gloves. And then you put a pair of parentheses. But your setter must have a parameter that is going to be of type that is the same of your instance variable. So it is going to be integer. And here we can say number of gloves as the name of the parameter, because we want to pass a value to this method, and that value is going to be assigned to your instance variable. So I'm going to open and close this method by using these curly braces. So now here you can see that the name of the parameter that we specified here and the name of the instance variable that we have inside the Boxer class is the same. Both of these names are the same. So inside this method, if I try to refer to my instance variable number of gloves, I'm going to have a problem. You can see that it is now referring to this parameter name instead of this instance variable. So how to solve this problem? How do I let the compiler know that I actually mean to access this number of gloves? I want to refer to this number of gloves instance variable instead of this parameter name. In order to solve this problem, you can just put the this keyword. So just type in here this. And then you can say this dot number of gloves. So what do I mean by this? This means an object of type Boxer, or an instance of type Boxer, or in other words, the instance variable. This refers to an instance of the Boxer class, and we have the number of gloves as the variable. So that's what I mean by instance variable. This is instance, number of gloves is the variable. And then we can put an assignment operator, and then we can say number of gloves, semicolon. So what are we doing here? We are getting the number of gloves as the parameter here, and we are assigning it to the instance variable of this Boxer class. So here, the reason that we are using setter is that it's much more flexible than allowing other classes to directly access our instance variables. For example, here I can create an if statement and say that if the number of gloves parameter, I am referring to this parameter, if the number of gloves is equal to, for example, 0, then we are not going to allow this value to be assigned to our instance variable. It is an invalid value. Here we can just show a message, or we can just say no, or we can just type in here return. The return statement is a statement that is not going to allow the codes after this statement to be executed. It is just going to return the result without allowing other codes after this statement to be executed. So when you put the return here, it is not going to go ahead and execute this line of code and assign the number of gloves to this variable. It is just going to return, it is just going to go back to where it was. So when you use the setter method, you have this advantage to check for an input or the parameter. If an input is an invalid value, then you are going to, here you have this if statement and you're going to return, and this code is not going to be executed. So that's why it is much more better, and it is a very good programming practice to always use getters and setters for your instance variables in Java. Never allow other classes to access your instance variables directly. So that's why you should use the private keyword here. Now it's time to go inside our main activity class and try to use our getters and setters. So this is going to be your challenge. Go ahead and try to get the values of your instance variables of the Boxer class, and also try to set a value to the instance variables, and then output those values to the console or to the log, or you can also output those values to the screen. So good luck. So let's go ahead and solve this challenge. Let's go inside this main activity class. So here we have an error. You can see that it says that we cannot access these private fields or properties, so I'm going to comment them out. Now here you can see that inside our onCreate method we have this myBoxer object and the myKickBoxer object. So I'm going to use the getters and setters of the myBoxer class. I'm going to type in here myBoxer dot set number of gloves, and I'm going to assign the value 2. I'm going to pass the value 2 to this set number of gloves as an argument, the actual value that we pass to this method. So when you pass number 2 here, it is going to go inside the Boxer class, and it's going to go inside this set number of gloves method. So I want to show you how the flow of the program executes. And then it's going to first check this condition. It's going to say that if the value that is passed to this method is equal to 0, if it is equal to 0, then return. It is not a valid value. If it is not equal to 0, then this condition here evaluates to false, and it's going to go and execute this line of code. It's going to assign the number of gloves that is passed to this method to the instance variable. And in this way, we can make sure that the value of this number of gloves variable is changed to another value. So let's go to the main activity class. And then here, I'm gonna say myBoxer dot get number of gloves, semicolon. So now that we pass the number 2 to this method, to this setter, now we can get it. And let me tell you that each of these properties that we have here, each of them are actually exclusive to a specific object of the Boxer class. So for example, if you create an object of type Boxer and name it as myBoxer, this myBoxer has these instance variables. These variables are exclusive to that variable. And if you create a new object, then that new object of type Boxer has its own instance variables. Okay, these variables are not shared. These are instance variables. So let's go back to the main activity, and I want to output the value of the number of gloves. So I'm gonna type in here log.i. Let's pass the tag, comma, and then I'm gonna say myBoxer dot get number of gloves. So let's delete this line of code because we don't need it here. We just want to output it to the console or to the log. Semicolon. Now let's go ahead and let's go open the logcat and then clear this area and then run the app. So here we can see that a strange number is outputted here. What's going on here? I passed number 2 to this set number of gloves, and it outputted number 6 here. So let's go into this Boxer class and let's see what is happening here. Oh, take a look at this method. We have this get number of gloves, and we said that return the value of this number of gloves, but multiply it by number 3 first. So it's gonna multiply number 2 that we passed here to this setter, and it's gonna multiply that value to number 3. So that's why you can see this value here in the console, in the logcat. So for example, if I change this number 2 to number 10, then it should output the number 30 to the log. So let's go ahead and run our app, and we should see number 30 here, because number 30 is passed to this method, and it's gonna go inside the Boxer class. Because we are calling the get number of gloves, it's gonna multiply number 10 by 3. So how do we know that the flow of the program is from top to bottom? How do I know that? So in order to understand this concept, we can create a breakpoint. A breakpoint is mainly used for debugging our application, but I'm gonna show you how it works. So for example, the moment that it's gonna set the content view, it's gonna set the activity underline main on the screen, we are going to create a breakpoint. So inside this left sidebar, inside this gray area, you can see these numbers. So just you can see in this line of code that is gonna set the content view, I just created a breakpoint. You can see this little red circle. This means a breakpoint, and we can control the flow of the program from this line of code on. So let's go ahead and click on this debug app icon. So we have the run app and we have the debug app. Just click on this debug app, and now let me show you the emulator. So it's gonna say waiting for debugger, so we should wait a little bit here. Now the flow of the program starts here, or in other words, stops at this line of code, and here we can control the flow of the program ourselves. So now inside the bottom area, you can see this debugging area, and here it says we have the variables section. So we have this. So this means an instance of the main activity is created, or an object of the main activity is created, and it is on the screen. And remember what I told you about objects in Java? Everything is object. We have the screen here, so it is an object of the main activity, and then it is about to set the content view. So how to control the flow of the program? We have some icons here. The first icon you can see is the step over. The step over is going to execute this line of code in its entirety. So let's go ahead and click on step over and let's see what happens. So now it executed this line of code, and this means that now the activity underline main is now on this content view. So we should see it here. And then it's gonna go ahead and create a new object of type boxer and assign it to this myBoxer variable. So I'm gonna click on step over. So now this line of code is executed, and here you can see that inside this variable section we have a new variable myBoxer that has this boxer object. And then if you open this myBoxer, you can see the number of gloves, the punch power, the punch speed. So here are the attributes that we created inside the boxer class, and some other attributes that are not important here. So let me close this myBoxer, and now it is about to execute this kickboxer object. So I'm gonna click on step over again. Now the kickboxer object is created. It is named as myKickboxer. We have the kick power, kick speed, punch power, and punch speed. Next, it's gonna go ahead and execute this line of code. myBoxer.set number of gloves number 10. So now we have this step over, but I want to see that how it is going to execute this set number of gloves. So if you click on step over, it's gonna just execute this line of code in its entirety, and we wouldn't understand how the set number of gloves method is executed. In order to see that how this method, this setter is executed, we need to click on something called step into. So let's click on step into. Now it stepped into the set number of gloves method inside the boxer class. And here you can see that first it's gonna execute this if statement. So I'm gonna click on step over to execute this if statement. So you can see that the number of gloves that we passed to this set number of gloves method was actually number 10. So number 10 is not equal to 0. So this if statement is skipped. And now it's gonna execute this line of code. It's gonna assign the number of gloves that we passed, the number 10, to this variable that currently has number 2 as the value. So number 10 is going to be assigned to this variable, and this variable is going to have number 10. So I'm going to click on step over again. Now the value of this number of gloves variable is changed to number 10. So inside the variable section, here you should see this value. And then it's gonna execute this ending curly brace. So I'm gonna click on step over, and it went back to our main activity, and now it's gonna execute this line of code. log.i myBoxer.get number of gloves. So I'm gonna click on step over and step over. So if you click on this logcat area, you should see this value again outputted to the logcat, to the console, number 30. So hopefully that makes sense. Now it's challenge time. So now you're supposed to go ahead and create getters and setters for all of the attributes that we have inside the kickboxer class, and then go ahead and inside the main activity class we have the myKickboxer object, and then try to set values and get values of your instance variables and output them to the screen or to the log. So give it a go and good luck. So let's go ahead and solve this challenge. Just go ahead and open this kickboxer class, and instead of writing these getters and setters here ourselves, we can get help from the Android Studio. So inside the curly braces, inside an empty area, I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to go and click on generate. And here you can see something called constructor, getter, setter, getter and setter, and some other methods. Let's click on getter and setter, and here just select all of these attributes because we want to create getters and setters for all of these attributes: kick speed, kick power, punch speed, and punch power, and click on OK. So all of these methods are generated for us automatically. So here you can see that it is perfectly done for us. And the next important point that I want to talk about here is that, for example, you have an instance variable and you don't want other classes to assign a value or to set a value to your instance variable. In that case, you can only create a getter. So for example, take a look at this kick speed here, this kick speed instance variable. For example, the value is 50, and I don't want any other classes to change this value. So I have a control over this instance variable because it is private and I have getters or setters for them. So in that case, I can easily delete this kick speed here, this setter for this instance variable, and in this way no other classes can assign a value to this variable, to this instance variable, and they can only use the get kick speed in order to access the value of this variable. Okay, that's really great. That's a very great feature. So we have complete control over an instance variable. So in the next tutorial, we are going to continue learning OOP concepts such as constructor, inheritance, interface, and etc. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video.